Welcome, everyone. And I want to say a huge welcome and shout out to everyone who's just joined me in the studio. So many of you have joined in the last few hours and days, like Elizabeth and Sona and Tyler and Christine and Kristen and Davis and Emily and Jessica and Julia and Nellie, Maria, Lauren, Cheryl, Anna, on and on and on. Welcome, everybody. I'm so thrilled. I can't wait to start this new year with you inside of the studio. And if that is you and you'd like to join us, then make sure to head on over to highfam.com/studio, where I will give you everything you need to become an empowered leader for your family and build that family culture that you deserve. Today, I have some incredible questions about siblings, about attention, about chores, about husbands, about consequences for swearing. We're going to talk about sibling dynamics when they have fights. We're going to talk about strategies for maintaining friendships. We're going to talk about all sorts of things about exhaustion and stress and routines, because what can you do? Family life is complex and it involves a lot of different things, right? So first of all, say hi in the comments. Let me know where you are in the world, how old your children are, and also let me know if you've joined the studio yet, and if not, what are you waiting for? I'm here so that you can test drive my coaching style. You can see what type of answers I would give you inside of the studio. Of course, there's so much more in there as well, so make sure to watch the video that I dropped today on YouTube all about it, and I will I will give you whatever details and whatever answers you need to make sure that this is the right choice for you. Isabella says, I love the studio and you, Avital, and so excited for this new year with you. Thank you so much. Hello, Miss Lina from San Diego. So good to see you with a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old. Let me know where you are in the world and how old your kids are. That way I take a pulse of the room and I can tailor my answers to you to make them relevant for you. Okay, today we're going to talk about all those topics. Let's dive right in. And this is from Itzmare1621, and she writes, how do you manage family time when you have unpredictable weekends and crazy busy weekdays? Also, we have the blessing of guests and family gatherings often, which messes up the kids' routine, which we can't control. So any tips on that? It's one of the biggest blessings in life, so we don't want to cancel it out, but the timings start very late. Okay, so first of all, I can relate to this. I host a lot. We have gone through eras in our life with very chaotic, very busy schedules, intense work, fellowships, night shifts, moving countries, having babies, all of that kind of thing. So I can totally relate to your question. And I want to help you kind of get the right mindset when things feel chaotic. How do we carve out time for our quality time with our immediate, intimate family, right? With our close knit, our partner, our children, that type of thing. Okay, so the first thing that I think might be helpful is to replace the thought that your routine has to be rigid, right? That your routine has to be predictable exactly the same time every single day. That would be nice, but that doesn't sound like it's possible in your current era, right? And replace routines that are fixed to the clock with rituals. Okay, with a series or a sequence of behaviors that help indicate that it's bedtime, or that it's wind down time, or that it's time to get up in the morning. Okay, because consistency, being consistent with your children, can sometimes be about what we do, not necessarily always about when we do it. So, for example, if I have guests coming over tonight, maybe tonight we're not going to do our bedtime routine. But if I was going to do our bedtime routine, I would keep it ritualistic and repetitive. Okay. So busy, irregular schedules make rigid routines feel absolutely impossible, right? It leads to us to feel defeated. And so we've got to switch our mindset. And I want you to know that research shows that kids actually really benefit from predictable sequences, not fixed clocks. Fixed clocks is also good for the circadian rhythm. If you can get there, you can get there, and that would be great. But the routine should be about the order of the events, not necessarily the timing. Okay, so even if bedtime has to slide to 10 p.m., or you'll still do your kind of bath, story, prayer, or something like that, right? So that you can build that emotional safety, that predictability through ritual, not through rigidity. Now, I would recommend trying to get bedtime at least to be on the clock, right? Or within the half an hour, like between 7 and 7:30 or something like that, okay? But you have to remember that all of parenting and all of life really is about trade-offs. Right? We make trade-offs all of the time. And if you are choosing to have this busy, chaotic schedule to host because that's part of the work that you do, or the mission that you're on, or the belief system that you have, then you have to let go of the idea of perfect parenting. We all do. And we have to embrace the idea of a good enough rhythm. okay? Because perfectionism in parenting is a very this insidious hidden stressor for many of us. We have this perfectionistic mindset in our head. I'm not doing it well enough, right? It's not routine enough. It's not predictable enough. I'm procrastinating too much, that kind of thing. And that causes rumination and guilt and burnout. And that is not a price that you can afford to pay. That's way too expensive, okay? So you've got to coach that perfectionism, right? You've got to, couch that perfectionism. You've got to coach yourself to move away from that perfectionistic mindset. Okay. Let's look at what is working and double down on that. So even if the week is wild, even if there's a lot of busyness, even if there's a lot of blessings and, as you said, it's a blessing and we love it, and guests and chaos and busyness is good, but I can't carve out this time for my kids. I want you to ask yourself, is there one or two anchor points that you could protect, that you could make sacred? Okay, maybe you have Sunday morning pancakes as just us. You have Friday night dinner as just us. You have 5 minutes at bedtime every single day. It's just us, and we will not give it up. Not for the guests, not for the work, not for any other chaos that happens, right? And that can restore a sense of agency and progress, because the truth is kids don't need all day to be predictable and routine, and they don't even need every day to be predictable and routine. But they do need some anchor points, some things that they can depend on. This is happening come hell or high water. Okay, so try and build those in. Okay, now finally, I just want to remind you that being adaptable, growing up in a house that is hustling and bustling, seeing our parents with a high work ethic, working hard, busting themselves, it can build adaptability, and that is a skill. Flexibility in children is something good. Just yesterday I was coaching someone who was saying they're not sure about moving country. And we spoke about the fact that, yes, when you move country, when you move house, when you're busy with work, when when there's chaos in our life, on the one hand, yes, it can uproot children. It can destabilize them. They can feel like the earth is shaky underneath them. It can be hard. But the trade-off there, because there's always a trade-off, is that they learn that they are adaptable, that they are flexible, that they can handle new environments, new scenarios, new realities, new people, right? And so I want you to make sure that you are viewing your life not as some hardship that you're putting on your children, okay? We all have different stresses in our lives. Maybe it's because, like me, you live in a war zone. Okay. Maybe it's because you have some kind of disease or diagnosis or health issue that you're dealing with in your family. Maybe it's because your family's been through a nasty divorce. Maybe it's because of financial downturn. Maybe it's because of many different things. We all have some kind of big anxiety, stressor, struggle, weight that we burden. And that burdens us in our lives. And what I want you to think about this is not, oh no, I've put this upon my kids. I've made their lives harder. I'm sacrificing something from their lives. I wish I could protect them from this, right? Because most of the time, let's say 90% of the time, stressors actually make us stronger. Okay, so the saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger, is usually true. There are some stressors that can crush us, right? There are some stress that's too much stress. There's some stress that really does leave that dreaded childhood trauma that we think about. But those really are the edge cases. Those really are rather extreme scenarios. Most stressors that we deal with, like mom and dad are working late, we're hosting a ton, there's a busy schedule, those types of things don't crush our children, but they actually build them up. They build them into flexible, adaptable, resilient adults. And that's not something to be sorry for. So I very much hope that this answers your question, Itzme. The practical takeaway, apart from feeling good about yourself and feeling confident and knowing that the stress isn't going to hurt your kids, is to find those anchors in the week, okay? And make them a ritual. Like, we always do a bath and a story before bed. And we do that even if it's just a 5-minute version, even if it's at 10 p.m. tonight, right? Or we always carve out a specific time on the clock. Saturday morning at 11 o'clock is our, tea time and poetry, like Julia Bogart does, right? Something like that that's fixed, that's reliable, that's steady. All right, does that make sense? Give me a yes in the comments. Let me know if that makes sense and push back if not. And I'm moving on to Christina's question. Christina asks, Okay, let me just read this out. Here it is. She says, "Hi, Avital. I would like to ask your advice on this. How to stop my 4-year-old daughter from coming to my bed at night. We have 2 other daughters, 6 and 2. They all sleep together in their bedroom, and the 4-year-old one slept perfectly well since she was 1 year old. But when she was 2, we moved houses and the youngest sister was born. And that's when she started coming out at night. At first, I thought she needed it because of the big changes in her life. But it's been 2 years now. I feel she's fine during the day. And I think it's only become some kind of habit at night. I would like her to sleep in her own bed since I can't sleep properly when she's there. Thank you for any advice." Anyone here have a sleep issue like this, where a child that is older, that could totally sleep through their bed if they wanted to, if they, got the help, is getting into your bed at night? First of all, I just really, really want to encourage you, Christina, to take the steps to change this. Because if you're not sleeping properly at night, that is disrupting every system in your body. That is making you more triggered, more short, right? It's aging you. It's making you sicker. It's making you tireder. It's making you a lower grade version of yourself in every regard. So getting fantastic sleep every night is actually a parenting kind of obligation, right? We really need to strive for that. And if our kids keep interrupting that sleep, we have to nip that in the bud or take care of it, because it will derail us, right? Eventually, our kids are going to pay a really high price for that. They don't even realize it, right? They can't know the kind of contract they're signing. Oh, I'll disrupt mommy, 3 times a night for 5 years. And in the end, she'll be resentful and exhausted and sick. Sure, I'll sign on the dotted line. No, they don't understand the contract that they are signing. We understand the long-term benefit, the long-term, cost, okay, the long-term consequences. Which is why, first of all, I'm not suggesting that she's being manipulative, okay? But this is a sleep association, okay? She has learned this sequence, right? Come into your bed. It started because you moved house and she had a baby and blah, blah, blah. So it started then, but now it's become a habit, okay? So her brain is just thinking that snuggling with you is how you fall back asleep, right? She's just become used to this behavior. And therefore, we need to train a new cue for this behavior. Okay, so we're not just trying to stop that behavior, but we're trying to replace the night visits, right, with a consistent alternative. What can I do instead if I wake up, if I had a nightmare, if I just kind of, wake up in the middle of the night? Okay. And so what I want you to actually do with her is to retrain her that as she gets up, you walk her back to her bed. You say good night and you say, we're staying in our bed. Okay. Now we'll talk in a minute about the prep you can do ahead of time and what you can do the next morning. But in the night, this is the first thing. In the night, when she comes to you, you say, oh, I love you, sweetie. Take her hand and take her back to bed. You've got to be boring. You've got to be really boring. It can't be this exciting thing. It can't be a drama. It can't be time for negotiations. I wouldn't maybe even say any words, maybe just with a warm, loving body language, just take her back to her bed. And it's almost like you're going to train her brain that when she wakes up in the night, there's no need to leave her bed. She's just going to get put straight back. Now, one of the things you have to know about this, whenever you're trying to change a behavior, is that it can be exasperating at first. If you've ever potty trained a child, which you probably have, you know that it takes often persistence, okay? So what I want you to imagine is that she might do this 100 times, okay? And you're just going to say, okay, this night, tomorrow night, for the next 10 nights, she'll get out of bed 100 times. And every time, I'm just going to calmly walk her back to her bed. Every single time, without fail, that's all I'm going to do. I have a plan and I'm going to stick to it until it sticks. And I say that because many times we just give up. It's not working. She kept coming. But we give up before we pass the threshold of building a new neuronal pathway and a new habit. You've got to train the new cue. And it takes a little bit more practice than many of us parents care to know about, right? So we just give up. And then we exacerbate the problem even more. Okay. Now, you can also help her in advance, right? So you can make a plan with her. You can say, sweetie, you're a big girl. And it's time to sleep in your bed just like your sisters do. And I want to help you to do that, okay? So how are we going to help you do that? Well, you can make a little plan with her. You can make a little chart. Every day that you stay in your bed, we're going to put a sticker here, right? I'm not a big fan of sticker charts, but I think for a 4-year-old to see their success, to see their progress can be really, really helpful. It can rewire their brain for motivation and for consistency, right? Because this is habit change. Habit change is hard. And we often need like a reminder or a timer, to brush our teeth for a full 2 minutes or to go to the gym, or, we need that motivation. We need that structure. So I want you to help her with words that are empowering. I know you can do this. I'm going to help you. We're going to keep coming back to bed if you get out of bed, but I know that you could stay in bed. If you wake up and you think, I should go to mommy, here's what you're going to do. You're going to cuddle your teddy. You're going to put your blanket over you and you're going to close your eyes and do deep breathing, maybe teach her box breathing or something like that, some kind of thing that she can do instead of coming to you. Okay. And she can decorate this chart and you guys can work together and you can say, you know what, if we do a whole week of staying in bed, we're going to celebrate together. We'll do a dance party. We'll go out for ice cream. I'll get you a new book, whatever. It doesn't even matter. Just a little reward to feel like, wow, I accomplished something. I overcame a behavior and it wasn't easy and I did it. You can love her fully and still need your sleep. And she also needs her sleep. So these two things coexist together. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. You need to offer her good sleep. And it's incredibly important. Luana, welcome. Luana says, my 3-year-old only sleeps with me. If I leave the room, he cries and calls for me. Hi from Brazil. Luana, is this something you'd like to change? Because if so, you can use what I just taught Christina. This consistent, warm, very, very simple, very repetitive, very non-reactive, right? There's not a lot of words. There's not a lot of excitement. There's not a lot of drama. There's not a lot of negotiation. Now you're going to sleep in your bed. Now you're going to sleep without me. I'll be back, but you're staying here. And with a 3-year-old, you can do that gradual approach. You put him to bed and you say, I'm going to go and get my coffee. Okay. I'll be back in a minute. And you just go for 10 seconds the first time. And then the second time you say, I just need to go take a phone call. I'll be right outside the door. And you come back after 2 minutes and you gradually elongate that time. But if he does come out crying, then you just pick him up nonchalantly and put him back in bed. No, you're staying in bed now, darling. It's time to stay in bed now, darling. I know, now we're in bed. And we just keep doing that until it really becomes boring and they eventually do give up. And you don't need to feel bad about that because your child really does need the sleep. Luana, does that make sense? Does that help you form a plan? One thing I'll say about any kind of sleep training is that we're so tired and so triggered when we have to do it that you really need a plan. You really need to write out the steps that I just said and say, okay, I'm going to help her prepare to fall asleep, before the night. And then anytime she wakes up during the night, I'm going to walk her back to her room with a simple mantra of, I love you. It's time to stay in your bed. And in the morning, and I did say I would talk about that, in the morning, you can praise and encourage and be like happy and excited and proud. Hey, darling, you only got out of bed 2 times last night. The night before it was 5 times. You're getting really much better at this. Doesn't it feel good to get a good night's sleep for your body? Do you know that a good night's sleep makes your brain grow better, makes you smarter? It makes you faster. It makes you stronger. It makes your skin glow. It makes your hair grow. It's so good for us to get a good night's sleep. So I'm so proud of you that you did it. It's good for me. I'm a happier mommy in the morning. I promise you that. And it's good for you. And last night was twice, but I bet tomorrow it could be 0 times, right? Well done. Keep going. I believe in you. And you're just going to really encourage and stay the course until they do it. I promise you, your child can. Okay. It's just a question of the right consistent leadership, right? That is what I teach inside the studio, is that confidence to lead, say, no, I am doing this and here's how I'm doing it. And with a 4-year-old, it's about where they sleep, right? But with a 14-year-old, it's about a whole different set of issues. And it's really important that you develop that confidence right now. Okay. Emmanuel says, any tips for an age gap of 2.25 years between siblings? Having my second in August. My first is sleep trained already, fully potty trained, sweet, social, and very well behaved baby girl. That's wonderful. Congratulations. I'm so thrilled for you. Sounds like you're doing great. I don't have specific tips for that age gap, although all my children have around that age gap, 2.5, 2.25 years. And I personally have found it to be a very wonderful age gap, although I think many different gaps well, but it's really a lot of fun. And one of the things I'll tell you about the transition is that I found it very easy. And I think a lot of people hype this up and make it she's going to be so jealous. She's going to be dethroned. You won't be able to handle 2. 2 is so much more than 1. All these kind of fear mongering, and it can be challenging. Of course it can. Like, having a baby is never the most smooth sailing thing. There are challenges inherent to parenting. But I do want to just encourage you with positivity and optimism that it can also be lovely and sweet. And a 2.5-year-old really, I don't know, there's something so almost babyish about them still, right? They're still really very young and very cute and very sweet and very lovable and very easy to be patient with. And so in some ways, right, in other ways, they could be maddening. But my point is that they sometimes, with an older child, they get jealous of all the attention that a baby's going to have. Oh, the baby's so cute. The baby is held. The baby is snuggled. But with a 2.5-year-old, they're still getting all of that stuff. So it's nice for them. It's a very natural transition. All of my children, my eldest 4, do not remember life without their younger sibling, right? It's just a reality. It's just part of who they are. And I think that's a great benefit. Emmanuel, does that answer your question, or was there something specific that you wanted help with? Let me know and I'll keep going meanwhile with the next question, which is from Cornco. And she writes, "Hi, Avital. I'm loving all your videos. Thank you so much. I'm only on the first question from Taryn and relating so much, except I have a 3-year-old that wants my attention constantly. I'm due with baby number 2 in a couple of weeks. I just found you, so I've been implementing some of what you said to her. My question is sort of related. My 3-year-old is super attached to the point that she doesn't want to toddle off and explore if there are some people around. She gets extremely clingy and wants me to stand right there with her, even in places we frequent. I'm quite shy as well, and I don't know how to help her run off and explore. I especially don't know how to help her navigate relationships with other kids. I've been loving your talks about raising resilient kids, and I know sometimes she will meet bullies, but I've never known how to help her when a kid pushes her or rips something from her hand. It seems to send her running back to me for the most part. Thanks for taking the time to help all us parents out here." Okay, thank you so much for that lovely question. And I can 100% relate and understand. Well, first of all, what you need to know is this isn't just about you being shy. This is about our society and our culture at large being built in a very isolated way, right? We're all in these isolated silos, just parent and child and in their apartment alone. And people are a lot less interconnected, a lot less villagey, a lot less tribey than maybe we used to be. And by the way, that's something that I'm on a mission to change. I would like to empower you to be one of those, pioneers that's creating community around you, that's inviting people into your home, that's bartering, I'll babysit your kids today, you babysit my kids tomorrow, let's all go together on vacation. A sense of connection, a sense of being together is very key. It's very protective for our mental health. It's very good for our longevity. It's really, really great for our kids. And so the first thing is just, this isn't a you problem. This is an us problem. This is us as a society. And we all need to work to change that and to make it more connected. Okay. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I'm glad that you're asking this question, because it shows me that you know that this is important. And it is. Your child at 3 really does need to be socializing with other people. Okay, by the time your child is 4, they need to be able to have a play date and get along with other kids and behave in a pro-social way. And that means delaying gratification. And that means being a little bit empathic and thoughtful of others. And that means not being aggressive or violent, all of those types of things. And so all of you out there with toddlers and with 3-year-olds, it is the time to expose them and to give them opportunities to connect with others. Doesn't have to be their age group. It could be slightly older children. It could be slightly younger children. It could be adults. It could be animals. Like, we just want them getting those social skills going. We want them to start to learn really how to relate to others. Because actually in my book, Reclaim Play, if you haven't got it, go and grab it. In my book, I outline the different stages of development of play, right? And it starts with them just kind of being parallel to other people. They're playing in the same space, but they're not, before they're parallel, they're even just completely unaware, right, of other people. But then slowly, we want to build them towards full social play, where there are rules and there's turn taking and there's teams, right, and that kind of thing. By the time they're 8 years old, for example, when they're playing soccer with their friends, right, and they need a lot of practice to build out those skills of listening to what others say, of taking turns, of sharing, of brainstorming together, of problem solving together, of including people, of kind of handicapping themselves when someone's much younger or when someone can't do things as much, so that they can be more inclusive, right? Like, you'll see an older child being, let's say, rough and tumbling with a younger child with an arm behind their back or something like that. But that's because they learn to take perspective and they know, I'm much bigger, I could crush him, I need to be careful, right? Those are the types of things they need to develop. So if you feel quite shy, and you don't know how to help her run off and toddle, I want you to try to start belonging to a community, to a place. Maybe it's joining the local library, the church, a play group, some kind of group meetup. Maybe it's having your cousins over, or going over to neighbors' houses, or any opportunity to be in a more socialized environment, okay, where there are more people, where she can start to get to know them. You say it's places that we frequent, but what I'm missing in your question, what I'd like to hear is people that we frequent, right? People that she can get used to. If she is so intensely attached just to you, I would like to I would like to form a plan with you for her to be able to attach to other people as well. We know, and this is a bit of tough love, so don't take it harsh, because there's still things you can do about this, so don't be upset. But we do know that young children need more than one attachment figure. The more, the merrier, okay? If they have mom and dad and grandparents and a teacher and a neighbor and a cousin that they feel comfortable with, that mom can leave and they can be okay. That's how we know that they're comfortable with them, right? That they can not have, maybe they cry, maybe they're a bit teary for a few minutes, but then they get over it and they have fun. That's protective for them. That's good for them. That creates a sense of stability, right? Because none of us really are built to depend solely on one human being, right? We do this in our marriages. We put all of our expectations on one human being. How's that working out for us? Not very well, right? We want our children to be able to put their expectations not just on you. By the way, it's also better for you, because it's too much for any one person to handle all of the parenting expectations. So they need to be able to get their mentorship, their support, their love, their connection, their friendship, their help, their snacks from more than just one person, okay? And that's why I want you to start building that sense of community, okay? Now you say, I especially don't know how to help her navigate relationships with other kids. And this is something that becomes much easier when those other kids are people that we are close to. I'll give you an example. When I moved to America, we knew nobody, okay? We lived in a neighborhood where I didn't know anyone, had to start everything from scratch, had to build relationships and friendships. And in fact, there was this one woman who I met. Actually, I met her, I think, in a line to a Dr. Laura Markham lecture. Okay. And I hit on her. Okay. I was like, oh, hey, I'm new around here. I see we have kids the same age. Let's be friends. And it didn't work out. And I tried 2 or 3 times. And it's not easy to make friends. You feel rejected. You feel like you're asking someone on a date. It can be a real challenge, right? But I persisted a little bit, and in the end, we became best friends. We became very, very, very close. But it took time. It took a lot of effort to putting myself out there. And you're saying you're shy, and I know that's not easy. But that's kind of the type of effort that we have to put in to create those relationships. And why am I saying this? Because then with her children, when children weren't getting along, when there was a fight, because we became so close, because we became so acclimated to each other, because our kids got used to each other, because we frequented each other, right? Each other's houses, we spent time together, we were able to solve those issues of, oh, this kid snatched, this kid grabbed, this kid is fighting with that kid, this kid doesn't feel like playing today, right? It's so much easier than with strangers in the playground. When you're with a stranger in the playground, you feel instantly on guard, defensive. They're going to judge me, they're not going to be nice to my kid, they're not going to understand me, whatever. You just don't know. You don't know who you're talking to. You don't know what they might be like. You don't know if they're going to run and tell all about you on social media, whatever. You don't know. So you feel even more nervous. But when you build stable relationships with other moms, with other families, one of my favorite types of friendships that I teach to build inside the studio is whole family friendships, where you really want to work hard to find families that can hang out with your family, where the adults get on, where the kids get on, where there's very good cross-pollination of friendships. And so that becomes a lot more like a tribe, a lot more primal, a lot more reliable, a lot more stable, a lot more dispersed. There's a lot less pressure on just this one child. Like when your child has a play date with just another child, it's very concentrated, not in a good way, right? It would be better. And we do play dates. Of course, we do play dates. And as they grow older, it's better. But with young children are developed, okay, evolved to be part of a group, okay, to be part of a group with adults present. And the adults have this kind of dispersed attention where we're all kind of watching out for each other's children, and we're all there for each other's children. And that is what we're evolved for. And that's why it's so hard when you're by yourself in a playground and you're trying to make a friend and it feels forced and it feels nerve-wracking and draining. Whether you're an extrovert or an introvert, that can be very, very difficult. Okay. So I want you to work on building sustainable community. I think one of the best places to do that is in a local religious institution like a church, because even if you're not religious and you're not a believer, typically churches are going to have things like children's programs, and they're going to have things with, whole families arriving all together, and music and food and all of those building blocks of what creates that community piece. But maybe you have it in other ways, right? Maybe nearby, there's groups of people who meet in the park every Saturday for picnics. Maybe you have it because you're all dog lovers and you all bring your dogs to the forest, whatever. Okay. But you want to try and build something sustainable in that regard. Now, specifically though, I will answer your question about what to do when someone rips something from her hand. Okay. She runs to you, you said. Okay. So she runs to you and you can do something really simple. You can offer a little bit of empathy. Okay. Oh, they grabbed that from you. Oh, someone snatched or someone pushed you. Okay. That's rough, right? A little bit of empathy. Don't go too heavy on the empathy, because you don't want her to feel like, oh, something terrible has happened to you. You don't want her to, how if a kid falls and cuts themselves and they're bleeding and they're like, I got hurt, and they come to you and they tell you they got hurt. But then when you go, oh, you're bleeding, they suddenly are like, oh, and they think it's a much bigger deal than they thought it was a moment ago. They're reading your cues all the time to see if this is a big deal or not a big deal. So a kid pushing me, a kid grabbing something from me, it's not pleasant. My parents should be empathic about that. But it's not a big deal. It's routine. It's normal. Everybody goes through it. You'll get over it in 1 minute. And that's the kind of thing that we actually want to empower them with. Like, oh, I'm sorry, sweetie. Okay. And then you want to coach them on what they can do. So this is the piece about empowering her. This is the piece about resilience, right? This is a piece about her saying, okay, I'm going to actually play over here because I don't want to play with them. I'm going to go and say, please, can I have my toy back? You took it from me. Whatever, right? It could be whatever kind of solution is appropriate to that scenario. And I think what's also going to be really helpful is to get her to tell the story in her own words. What happened? Oh, he came up to you and then he grabbed the toy and then he ran away. Why? Because whenever something difficult happens to us, one of the things that makes it much worse is when we have chaos in our mind about it, when we can't quite piece together what happened, when we feel shocked, when we feel that's what actually creates trauma, is when there's a shock to the system that we can't make sense of, that creates absolute chaos. So we as parents have this tool where we can create order for our child. Some kids don't know how to be gentle. That kid came up to you. He was very upset that you had the toy. He wanted the toy and he grabbed the toy. And now you feel sad, right? You're just there's no judgment about how, if that kid's a bad kid, that she should be. So you don't even have to say now you feel sad, right? You don't even have to talk about feelings, because we talk about feelings way too much in modern day parenting. And it's actually making our children really fragile. So don't double down and go so heavy on the feelings, but say clearly what has happened and what you expect her to do. Okay. So first a bit of empathy, then a bit of coaching about what she can do, right? What she should do next, and clarity around the situation. All right. Corn cob, I hope that helps. Let's move on to Michaela. And Michaela says, I loved this advice. Thank you. I am just wondering how to approach situations when you are aware that the needs of your child are not met due to external factors, such as severe health issues of another family member causing little attention for the child. Okay, so what she's referring to here is, I said that in modern day parenting, so often we look at bad behaviors or bad choices or bad attitudes, and we think just one thing. Oh, this child needs more connection. This child needs more special time. This child must have unmet needs. We get our detective hat on and we're like, oh, there must be a reason for this behavior. And maybe there is, and maybe there isn't. But either way, what we actually should be thinking is, how can I help my child behave better? How can I correct them, redirect them, coach them to make better choices and to behave in a civilized manner, even if they have unmet needs? Even if you're hungry, even if you're tired, even if someone else got more attention than you, even if you're worried and anxious about the test tomorrow, you still need to know how to behave respectfully. And we need to stop making apologetics and excuses for our child behaving badly by always saying, oh, it's because XYZ. It's because of a diagnosis. It's because now what Michaela is saying, okay, Avital, but sometimes a child really does have unmet needs. Sometimes there's a family member with severe health issues and that child can't get a lot of attention that they do need. And what do you do then? And here's what I say about what you do then, okay? First of all, we strive to meet the child's needs. Okay? We strive to compensate for whatever issues are coming up, right? Children who are faced with divorce, with disease, with war, with financial downturn, with family severe health issues, do need us to try, even though it's even harder in those circumstances, but to try to meet their needs best we can. Now, remember, human needs, actual needs, are quite basic. Okay, they're quite basic. They're almost taken for granted in most Western countries, right? It's having food on your plate, having a roof over your head. We consider education to be a basic need, having good sleep, having someone who has a secure attachment with you and loves you, right? Those are the types of things that are building blocks of a good childhood. You don't need that much more than that. You know, having brand labels, having trips to Disney World, having someone doting on you 24/7 or playing with you every day. Those are not needs. Those are extras that you can give your child and it's fine, but it's not obvious that it benefits them. So the first thing is you try to meet their needs and you calm yourself that actually their needs are being met, right? If your child is fed, if your child is sheltered, if your child is bathed, if your child is educated, if your child sleeps at night, if your child gets love, then their needs are being met. Okay? Would they like more attention? Maybe. Show me the child that doesn't want more attention. I've never met that child. I've told the story before of my friend who homeschooled and unschooled. In fact, 24/7 was with her children all the time. There could not be a mother who gives her child more attention than my friend. And her children always said, you don't spend enough time with me. So sometimes it's just a leaky bucket situation where children are always going to want more attention and you don't need to constantly berate yourself and say, oh, it's because there's a health issue in the family, the child's not getting enough attention. Maybe they are. Maybe they are getting enough attention. And by the way, I often have this with my students, that a student will say, my children are adopted. You know, I'm a single parent. There's a health issue in the family. We can't afford a lot of things. And therefore, my child is somehow suffering. And I'm saying to myself, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. Don't make it mean more than it is. Don't make it mean more than it is. Don't read into the situation and project onto it all sorts of traumatic results. Here's what I mean by that. This is really important. So if you're multitasking, come back to me. When people go through a traumatic event, objectively a traumatic event, okay? Say people go through a terrorist attack, okay? Or a car crash or hurricane, whatever, a traumatic event. Only 10% of the people who go through that event, on average, only 10% of those people, okay, so only 1 in 10, is going to have lingering symptoms of trauma. Only 10% of people are going to be traumatized. The other 90% are going to recover naturally. Okay, why am I saying this and why is this so important? Just because your child is going through something that's objectively hard, someone in the family has severe health issues, that's objectively hard, right? I know lots of my students who have children who one of them has special needs. It's objectively hard for the rest of the kids, right? They get less attention, etc. Or who go through worse things, right? All sorts of traumas. Just because they're going through something that's objectively considered negative does not mean that it has a negative impact on them. That is a cognitive fallacy in our head. That is not true. In fact, for many people, the hardest parts of their lives, the most difficult things that they go through, strengthen them. They don't weaken them, they strengthen them because of what we said earlier, that what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. And so you do not have to feel apologetic that there is this disastrous situation of a terrible health issue in the family because it's somehow influencing the child, because it could be the best thing that ever happened to the child. No one would wish it. We wish it didn't happen. It's terrible and it's a lot of suffering and pain, but there are silver linings in suffering and pain. There are silver linings in grief, in loss, in tragedy, in fear, in trauma. And the silver linings is that it makes you stronger, it makes you more empathic, it helps you take perspective, it makes you delay gratification, it builds your character, it builds your strength. You know how to deal with difficult situations because you've been doing it your whole life, right? Often the kids who grow up in the harshest circumstances are the ones that develop some of the best character traits. Not always, right? It doesn't have to happen that way, but it can be. And so it's really important to understand that this isn't a bad thing that happened to your child. It's objectively a bad thing, right? Oh, disease is not something anyone wants, but it doesn't mean that it's that her or him getting less attention because of that has negative effects on them. Okay, that's really, really important. It might not be adverse for them at all. It might be, in fact, very positive. Okay, with that said, it's also okay to coach your child on their situation. You know, honey, it's not easy that your family member has severe health issues. I know that sometimes you wish that I could spend more time with you, or that, I took you to all these different sessions like I take your sibling to, or, that there was more budget for the things that you want to do. And I know that's not easy. And you're strong and you're capable, and I appreciate you and I believe in you, and you can handle this, and you're amazing. You're great. You do it with a smile and you do it with gratitude, and you burden your responsibilities really, really well. You shoulder them. And I'm so impressed with you, right? And you want to speak to that child's maturity, capacity, capability, strength, resolve. One of my friends grew up being completely responsible for his older sister's severe disability. She's nonverbal, she's non-responsive, she's severely, severely disabled. And he was responsible for her as a child almost all the time. I mean, there were parents there, but he was a huge part of raising her. Okay. Now, is that fair to put on a child? Is it hard to put on a child? Do we feel sorry for him as a child? Maybe. But let me tell you that he is one of the most incredible, resilient, he is a load-bearing wall. Okay. People in his community can lean on him. His family can lean on him. He can take on more responsibility. He volunteers to do this and to do that. And he's incredible. He's an amazing dad. He's an amazing husband. He's an amazing professional. Okay. And I can't help but believe that all of that responsibility and all of that hardship that he went through in his childhood formed him. Okay. That he was molded in the fire. He was molded in the fire. And that's not a bad thing. None of us are going to orchestrate those types of situations for our kids. None of us want our kids to go through tragedy or harm or difficulty, but it's not a bad thing. Okay, that's what's really important to remember. So you can coach them and you can support them and you can compensate from time to time with some pampering, but don't apologize for your children's difficulties, challenges, and hardships, because that is what makes them incredible, resilient adults in the future. It just is. And let me tell you the flip side of that. Children who grow up in peace and prosperity, children who grow up with their every need met, children who grow up with special time and with connection and with amazing bedtime routines and with softness and with attunement and validation and justification and all of the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things and all of the calm and all of the luxury, okay, they often suffer the most in their life. They often are ailed by depression and anxiety and failure to launch and perfectionism and procrastination and nihilism and self-harm. And they fall prey to contagious, terrible ideas, right? To bad ideologies, to cults, to predators, because they weren't formed in the fire. They weren't molded under pressure. And then they can't take pressure. They can't take a breakup. They can't take losing a job. They can't take it when anything doesn't go their way. They have not been, smoothed out by sandpaper, right? We get wood to be smooth by roughness, by sandpaper. So I'm not suggesting you go hard and rough on your child on purpose, but if those types of things come up in your life, that's okay. They can handle it. They're strong, and you're there to be loving, but to believe in them and not to see them as weak. I hope that makes sense. Okay. Katesy says, hi, Avital. Consequences for swearing. My 7 and 5-year-old swear so often, and I find it very upsetting and embarrassing. They've picked it up from my dad, who swears a lot in the car. I've spoken with my dad about it, and he apologizes, but he is still doing it when I'm not around, it seems. Oh no, I lost her question. Hold on, here it is. I'm unsure what to say to my children when they swear and what consequences I can have to get this to stop. Thank you. Okay, so completely understand. Very triggering and upsetting when our children, speak in ways that we find offensive. Okay, I think it's really just important to teach them what swearing means. Okay, calmly. I don't know that I don't know that we would necessarily use consequences, but we can talk about that in a moment. But they are repeating a behavior that they're seeing from a valued adult and authority, so we can't blame them all that much, right? That's the role model that they're seeing. But I think it's important to be able to say to them, sweeties, I know that grandpa says those words in the car, but I want you to know that I don't approve of that because those words are rude. Do you know what the F word means? Do you know what the S word actually means? Okay. And you can explain what those words mean. I have explained what those words mean to my children so that they understand that they shouldn't just let them out of their mouth. It means something that can be offensive and that can be perceived as very, very rude. Right. So you can't control what they hear from grandpa or, in school or whatever. Right. But you can teach them how to speak in your home. Now, if you want to create more kind of consequences around this, I think the main consequence would be a redo. Okay, it's not really a consequence, but this is how I would respond. Okay, whoa, this Thistle Hill Cottage says, I use the term vulgar, which seems a little stronger than rude to me, at least. Right, it's rude. It's rude. It's stronger than rude. Vulgar, yeah, disgusting. Offensive, bad, whatever. You can just say these aren't appropriate and acceptable words. Now, kids do hear these words in music, on TV. Hi, Brandy, etc. They hear these words, and they might very naturally and very understandably experiment with them, right? And that's okay. But I think you need to share with them. And by the way, it's also interesting maybe to try to decipher, do they find it really funny? Do they find it really testy and edgy and cool? Is it just because grandpa's saying it, so they're just repeating it? Or are they saying it out of a place of mad, angry, I'm effing angry? Like, are they really using swear words in that kind of way? Because your coaching might be a little bit different in each of those, right? But what I think that you do want to say is I don't want you speaking that way. Can you please repeat yourself? Hey, I need you to be more careful about the words that come out of your mouth. Now, one of the things that you want to teach your kids is that words are really powerful, right? That words create realities, that words are something that you can never take back. It's funny, in Judaism, the idea of words are often referred to almost as powerfully as almost as taking a life. Like, if you speak badly about someone, it's like murder. It's akin to murder. Because why? When you gossip about someone, when you speak badly about someone, you are basically killing their reputation, right? That has knock-on effects that you can't even foresee. They might get fired. They might, their boyfriend or girlfriend might dump them. People might turn away from them. They might become isolated or sick or stressed, or all these things because of the rumors flying around about them, which is why there is this very, very kind of powerful expectation not to talk badly about people behind their back unless it's for a really good reason, unless they're a predator or something like that, or they need help. In those cases you can, but not just for gossip sake. And so I just say that because it's the type of thing that you want to teach your children, that words are very powerful and that you don't just throw them around, right? You've got to be careful with them. And when you say words like that are vulgar, right, that are swear words, then you appear to be a less refined person, maybe, right? You appear to be a trouble child, a mischief maker, someone that other people aren't really going to want their kids to play with, like you're a bad influence. And so it's actually not in your best interest to use those types of words, because it paints you, it's, to speak in kind of Gen Z speak, it's bad for your brand, right? It's not good for your brand. It's going to make your brand seem tarnished. It's going to cheapen you as a brand, right? And that's not good. And I would talk to tweens, to teens about their brand in terms of their reputation, right? Like what you wear, how you speak, how you present yourself, what you post online. All of these things are sending a message to your community. And today, we're very, very squeamish about saying, oh, you should care. If someone doesn't like how you look, then that's their problem. If someone doesn't like how you speak, then you're just not for them, right? We're all about the individual and our narcissistic preferences and impulses. And we often tell children that they should just be their authentic selves. You should just be yourself and forget what anyone else. You feel like swearing, you should swear. You feel like wearing crop tops and hot pants, wear them. You feel like wearing rude t-shirts and smoking cigarettes. It's individual expression. But what we miss with those types of thinking is that we miss what's in our child's best interest. Image that we portray to the world, every step we take, every word we use, how we do our hair, it all actually sends a certain message about what we stand for, about who we are, about how we expect to be treated, about what we can bring to the table, about what we can bring to the world, about what kind of relationships we're looking to build, right? And the way that you present yourself, say, on a dating app is going to matter tremendously to the type of mate that you might attract, the way that you behave, the way that you, your image that you portray. And that starts when they're 5 and 7 and they're swearing, right? That starts then when we say, I don't like that behavior because it sends the wrong message about you to the world. Okay. So I think the consequence is really just that they need to do it over. You just need to say, hey, I don't allow those types of words. You explain what those words mean. You explain why you don't allow them, which is what I just said. And then you ask them to repeat themselves. And if they're repeat offending, if they keep doing it, if they're not catching themselves, then you can say, you know what, sweetie, if you are going to speak like that, you're going to need to leave the room. You can't be in polite society if you talk that way. And that is, I think, kind of the general consequence for bad behavior in general, for antisocial behavior, is that you can't be with other people. And by the way, that is a pretty harsh consequence in the sense that we're all very wired for social connection. Hardened criminals, serial murderers. If we want to inflict the worst punishment we can on them, we isolate them. We put them in isolation, right? So it's a painful punishment, but it's fitting in the sense that if you don't treat people well around you, if you can't regulate yourself, if you can't exercise impulse control and delayed gratification, if you can't be polite, if you can't be well-mannered, if you're destructive or rude or vulgar or abrasive or aggressive to people around you, then you can't be with people around you. The whole premise of society is that we all have to rein in our most base impulses so that we can get along with others, right? So that everybody has, a respected space and dignity and, basic safety. And that starts in our home by telling our children, if you throw something, if you swear, if you're yelling, if you're acting, thoughtlessly about other people, then you need to go isolate. You need to go be by yourself until you're ready to treat other people with respect. And you can use those exact words until you're ready to talk properly. You're not going to be here. When you're not sitting at the dinner table with us, if you're using that language, please leave. And when you're ready to come back, you can come back and say, Mom, I'm ready to speak respectfully. I apologize for how I spoke. Okay. And that teaches them that not all behaviors are tolerated in society, that people will not take you under their wing and you will not garner favor and you will not do well in life if you behave badly. So you better rein in those behaviors. Does that make sense? If that answers the question, Katesy, or anyone else who has that question, and let's keep going. I think we've got time for one more. Okay. Oh, this is a very, very big question. This is a very big question that really I should do a whole series of videos about. Let's see if we can nail it in a short amount of time. Okay. The question is from Chi. Hi, Chi. And I happen to know that Chi's already joined the studio. So welcome to the studio, Chi. I love having you in there. It was a great pleasure meeting you last week. You say, I'm loving these videos. My question is about therapy. I'm wary of it. Much more like a go-to solution these days, but I realize that sometimes it's necessary. When is it worth considering taking a child to therapy, if at all? Thank you for all that you do. Okay, so in this case, we're talking about psychological therapy. We're not talking about occupational therapy or speech therapy or physiotherapy or any of the other types of therapies. We're talking about psychological therapy. When do we take a child to a therapist. So the first thing I want to recommend is I think that everybody should read the book Bad Therapy by Abigail Shrier. But I will just summarize the main takeaway for me, which is something that I felt before I read the book, and it was certainly reinforced by reading the book and her research. Okay, which is this. Therapy is not harmless. Therapy is not risk-free. There is a time and a place for therapy. We need it. It's useful. It can be effective. But it's not just something that we do willy-nilly without consideration. And here's why. There is such a thing called iatrogenic harm, which is when the healer harms. And in medicine, we all know that this is true. For example, you don't just have surgery unless there's a real indication for it. Why? Because surgery has risks and side effects, and it's only worth taking those risks if you really need the surgery. Now, if you do really need the surgery, you better get the surgery, right? But you're only going to do that as kind of a last resort, as a worst case scenario. You're going to try to exhaust other options beforehand. We know this when it comes to taking medicine or to getting surgery or to any kind of medical intervention. But what we don't realize is that therapeutic psychological interventions also enact some risk and often harm on young people or on anyone. And the reason is because we're fallen individuals, we're human beings, and therapists can often suggest all manner of psychological issues, right? Especially if they come from the world of psychoanalysis, those types of therapies that have no end date, that have no specific articulated goal that they are trying to help you to overcome, that into our history and into our childhood. And the problem is that people are suggestible, right? If you suggest that I had some kind of issue with my mother growing up, if you suggest that I'm somehow traumatized or damaged, if a therapist, a person in a position of authority and power suggests those things to me, then they might become true. I might imagine them to be true. I might please the therapist by agreeing with them and making them true. And thereby I can have all sorts of psychological weaknesses and fragility suggested to me. In addition, the therapist's incentive is for me to continue to come back. Even the best of therapists who don't mean to do this at all, that is the work model, right? The work model, their business model is when people come, they pay me, and that's how I make money. So it's a big problem for them to say, you know what, you don't actually need therapy. You're fine. You just need to buckle up and do the right thing and take the next step and, keep doing what you're doing. So that's a little bit of a kind of a crack in the system. Now, I say all of this as someone who has benefited from therapy. Okay, I've genuinely benefited from CBT therapy in my life, and has about 4 individuals who are extremely close to me, like my closest people, who are all therapists and social workers in the therapeutic field. And I have nothing but immense respect for them and for the work that they do. And they do good work and they are good therapists. But this is why I think you've got, I also have surgeons who are close to me. My husband is a doctor, but my husband tells everyone, stay away from doctors. Try not to see doctors. Try not to need doctors because there's harm, because there's risk, because they make mistakes, because when you only have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And it's a problem when you're human, and that's how you operate. You're trying to do good in the world, you're trying to help people, but you might enact more harm than good. Okay, so that's why I would say therapy is not a first step. Okay, it's only a tool that you would turn to when the basics are not working. Okay, so I would always try home-based coaching first. I would try home-based CBT therapy first. CBT, I think, is the most evidence-based, actually effective therapy. And that is because in CBT, there is a specific problem that you're trying to solve, a behavior that is obvious, that is recognizable. It's not just, I feel a bit off, or I don't have that much confidence. It's not something vague, okay? And it has a specific time frame where they're going to try and solve that problem, where then you can measure, is it working or isn't it working? CBT therapists are not going to dig into your history and, separate you from your parents. And I will just say, I'm so sorry, because this is a politically polarized issue, but what is happening, and this is happening a lot in the States and in European countries too, is that many therapists aren't actually behaving in a psychologically responsible manner Jordan Peterson has documented this very extensively, but they're behaving in an activist manner. And so I see this again and again with my own students, where they'll go to a therapist, for example, for marriage help, right? And the therapist will agitate them to actually get divorced, right? Will actually kind of drive a wedge between them. Or a mother who's taking their child for therapy for maybe, nightmares or bedwetting or being anxious, right? And the therapist is driving a wedge between the mother and the child, kind of this anti-family style of therapy. And that's worrying, right? That's beyond just the harm of suggesting all sorts of, oh, maybe you're traumatized by this, maybe he's gaslighting you, maybe it was your mother who did this to you, right? Those types of things. And this is all well documented in the book, so I would go and read it. But that's why I think you want to be careful with it. Like, it could be amazing, but it can also be harmful, so you've got to be careful with it. Okay. So what I think is much better is to start by getting all the basics straight. Okay. If your child is, having a hard time, is not behaving, is down on themselves, is lacking self-confidence, whatever it is, have you optimized sleep? It's a massive one. So many children are sleep deprived, and sleep deprivation is going to be symptomatic in many psychological ailments. You're going to feel sluggish, lethargic, incapable, incompetent, irritable, angry. You're going to binge eat. You're going to be a worse friend. You're going to be a worse daughter and a worse sibling, and all of those things. So have you optimized your child's sleep? Have you optimized their nutrition? Same thing. Have you gotten them off screen time? Have you gotten them out in nature? Are they moving their bodies enough? Are they with other people enough? Right? These are all the place to start. And before you seek a diagnosis or before you go to a child's therapist, I want you to get all the basics down. Is my child leading a healthy life? Are their body and mind optimized for them to feel good and behave well? Because if not, that's clearly the place to start. Okay. The other thing is that you want to consider therapy when there's a chronic distress or dysfunction, right? Where a child's emotional or behavioral challenges are persistent, they're escalating, and they're disrupting daily life. Okay, so we don't seek therapy for one-off things, for things that are sporadic, once in a while, not such a big deal. We can handle them. The ups and downs, the normal temperamental and developmental changes that children go through, having some tantrums, having some defiance, fighting with siblings, being a bit low, having some nightmares. All of this stuff is normal. And if something's normal, if something's within the norm, we don't want to seek therapy for it, because we're likely to go down a rabbit trail of pathologizing and diagnosis that is not going to benefit the child, right? We don't want to slap labels on things that don't need labels. We don't want to slap labels and medicine on things that could benefit from just parenting, okay? Sometimes it's our own lack of confidence, self-doubt, sometimes my own laziness that makes me not able to just help my child myself. And I'm like, oh, he needs therapy. Therapy is going to solve it for me. I happen to know for a fact that if I had taken one of my children to therapy at the many, many times when I was like, oh, he needs therapy, he would have gone down a diagnostic and pathologizing route that would not have served him in his life. He would have been seen as a problem, as a label, something that he would have been limited in his mind over what he could do and what he could overcome academically and socially and all of that stuff. And he'd probably have been medicalized as well. Now, some kids need that, and I'm not for a moment demonizing it or villainizing it. Some kids need it. But I think so many kids don't. I think so many kids, it's about their lifestyle, and it's about our parenting, being a strong leader, being there for them, creating routine, predictability, values, expectations, consequences, follow through, boundaries. So unless there's a behavior that you cannot overcome with all of those things, with the lifestyle changes and with parenting, then don't pathologize it, okay? Because therapy is also not going to fix those things. Therapy is just going to give you some extra tools when they're stuck with particular things. Therapy is not a magic bullet, right? Now, because CBT is effective, I actually have a series of books that I always recommend. I'm happy to drop a link to them in the description for this video. And it's the books about what to do when you grumble too much, what to do when you quake and when you're scared, when you're angry, when you get stuck, right? And these books are CBT based, they're activity books that you do with your child. And I happen to think that the parent is much better set up to give their child therapy than the therapist. So if you are going to therapy, I would go to therapy for you to get the coaching and the tools to help your child. Okay, I would much rather it comes through your relationship, through their attached relationship with their parent who loves them, who's there for them. I would rather it strengthens your relationship than weakens it by saying, my mom can't even handle me. My mom doesn't even know what to do with me. My mom needs some professional lady on a chair to tell us what to do, right? I don't want your child getting that message unless it's absolutely critical, okay? If it's critical, then go and get the help. But I don't want your child thinking, oh, mom's so exasperated with me. I'm such a problem. I'm so difficult. I'm so damaged. I'm so bad that mom needs to pay hella lots of money and go to this appointment and sit with some stranger who's a professor who's going to tell us what to do, right? I would much rather you go to a CBT child therapist and say, here's how my child's presenting all these different things. What can I do? How can I handle it? Now, you can do that first through everything I've just said: lifestyle, coaching, learn coaching skills, join the studio and learn how to be a leader and see if that doesn't clear it up first, right? I teach inside the studio all of these ideas of cognitive fallacies, of skewed ways of thinking, of mindset. Now, I'm not a therapist, so you might still need a therapist after that, okay? You might, but I would first try everything else. It's kind of like before we rush to surgery, we first try, diet, lifestyle, sleep, exercise, all of those things, right? Kirsten says, yes, a good therapy teaches the parent. Exactly. Because the last thing we want, it happens, but the last thing we want, this is the last resort, is for the child to have to be seated in therapy in that way. Okay. And therapy is most effective when the parent is involved. Okay. Parent-led interventions are actually more effective than child-only therapy. Okay. So anyway, it's going to be you. Anyway, you're the one. You are the one who leads this family. You're the glue, you're the curriculum, you're the leader, you're the CEO, you're the founder, you're the captain of the ship. So you can get some therapy. It could be helpful. It could be great. It could be wonderful, but it's not going to absolve you of your duties and responsibilities. It's not going to take the burden off of your shoulders. I would rather that you grow broader shoulders and a stronger spine than think that you can offload this to someone else. You can't. You never will be able to. It can't happen. All right. So start with parent coaching instead of child therapy, right? That will boost the parent's confidence. That will avoid outsourcing the leadership unnecessarily. Okay. Now, are there times when it's just too much? Are there times when it's persistent, it's escalating, it's disrupting their daily life, right? They can't go to school properly. They can't function in relationships properly. It's disrupting family peace. Are there times when you're just too depleted, when you have too much on your mind, when finances are too strained, when, there's a million other things going on, there's a divorce or there's disease or something like that, and you just can't do it and you need a bit of help? Of course. And then you get that push and you get that nudge and it's great. But I don't want therapy to become this catch-all, right? So back to the initial question. She says, I'm wary of it. It seems so much more like a go-to solution these days. Correct. But I realize that sometimes it's necessary. Okay. So I just want to add one more thing, which is that one of the problems, and she outlines this really well in the book, is that we're bringing therapy into everything in life. So we're bringing therapy into schools and into parenting, right? And into our home. It's like, and how did that make you feel, right? All of the therapized language. We're using language like terms like neurodivergent. We're just throwing it around. Everybody can just use that word, even if it doesn't exactly mean something that we all understand, right? It's an umbrella term. It's not a very specific diagnosis. Trauma, we're just throwing it around. What does it mean? What kind of trauma? When trauma? Big trauma, little trauma, lasting PTSD? What are we talking about here, right? These terms, gaslighting, all sorts of terms that we use for kids: sensory seeking, a spirited, deep feeling kid, indigo child. I don't know, all of these different kinds of labels. Some are more scientific, some are more woo-woo. It's a sign of the times that we bring that into our language all the time. And everything, it's like people throw out around the word abuse or safety or violence to mean all sorts of things that they didn't used to mean. That is called concept creep. And it's really well documented in Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff's book, The Coddling of the American Mind, another must read. But we don't want to let that into our homes. We want to really, I think, focus on resilience, focus on backbone, focus on values, focus on being a stand-up citizen, being a helpful person, having a mission in this world, being capable, overcoming, not someone who's going to feel fragile and weak, like, oh, I need a mental health day every day, and I need, my emotional support system, and I need all my different crutches, and I need trigger warnings, and I need safe spaces, because all of those things create a person who's weak, who's sad, who's disheveled, who's at the mercy of the world. Like, things are going to go wrong in this world. Things go wrong. We come up against challenges. We come up against diagnoses. We come up against loss and grief and terror and war and all sorts of things. And what you won't have in this world, right, is a trigger warning. That's the one thing you will never get, right? We don't get trigger warnings about difficult things that are coming up in our life. Instead, we have to practice towards them from childhood. We have to build a thick skin, a strong backbone, broad shoulders, a big smile, and a bushy tail so that we can approach our life with capacity. And I would rather you build capacity in your child than all of this emotional intelligence, talk, right? I think that's not emotionally intelligent. I think we confuse the words emotionally intelligent for emotionally volatile. I think many of us think that emotional volatility, constantly expressing my feelings, constantly being at the whim of my feelings, crying because I feel like crying, being authentic in my anger, getting mad. I think we think that that's emotionally intelligent, but it isn't. That's emotionally weak and volatile. That's being at the mercy of your emotions, which come and go like waves. Emotional intelligence, or more importantly, emotional strength, is the ability to withstand grief, loss, frustration, fear, feeling terrorized, feeling stuck, right? And move forward. I would rather we bring back more stoicism and more emotional mastery for our children than all of this emotional IQ, like, oh yeah, you're going to feel your emotions. You can name all the emotions. You can express all the emotions. You have lots of tools for all your emotions. No, stop being driven by your emotions. Emotions are just one little system. To me, and I've said this before, but to me, that's like saying, well, I drive a car, right? But whatever the indicator lights say, that drives the car. That is what I'm at the. Oh my goodness! It says, I'm turning left. I better turn left. It says that there's no oil. Everyone stop! Everyone get out! This is a crisis. No, you're in the driver's seat. Okay, yeah, there are those lights there. They're useful. You should follow them. If it says you're out of gas, go and fill up gas. If you're indicating right, turn right. Those are good lights, but sometimes they're faulty. Sometimes there's a problem with the light, not with the car. And even if it says you're empty on gas, you can still drive the car safely to the gas station, right? That doesn't mean you get to crash the car. And I think we're telling our children, oh my goodness, you feel sad? You feel left out? You feel offended? Crash the car, man. You're not in control. The car's in control. And I would rather we take back the wheel. Okay, doesn't matter if our daughter's PMSing, doesn't matter if our child's tantruming, doesn't matter if they have a new baby in the family or a sick family member or whatever it is. Emotional mastery. Overcome your emotions. That's how you're going to become a great partner in the future to your partner, a great colleague to your colleagues, a great sibling, a great community member, a load-bearing wall. Master your emotions. That is a countercultural message I'm going to leave you with today. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you to everyone who sent in these incredible, incredible questions. You guys are amazing. And I will answer every single question this April. That's my promise. That's what I'm trying to keep to. So make sure you keep sending them. Leave them on the comments on my latest YouTube video. My latest YouTube video is all about the studio. It's about how we raise resilient kids. It's about how I can help you do that. Check it out, highfam.com/studio. It's open right now, but it only opens once a year, and this price will never come back. And I'm very blessed and grateful to all the studio members who have gone on over to that video and left their testimonials to share their experiences with you, because obviously it's going to be so much more helpful for you to hear it from them than from me. So if you're not sure about the studio, you have nothing to lose. It's risk-free. Join us at highfam.com/studio. We're starting May 1st. I'm going to help you with your vision. I'm going to help you with your community. I'm going to help you with your family habits. Man, listen, you're on such a great adventure. You're on an amazing adventure. You have kids, okay? That is like the craziest, most mind blowing, amazing privilege and exciting thing you can be doing. You're building the future. And I know that you're already doing an amazing job, but you deserve all the support you can get. You deserve the roadmaps, the blueprints. That's my job. That's what I do. So let me be there with you. I would be honored. Let me go on this journey with you. I'm on this journey with my own 5 kids, and I would love to invite you in at highfam.com/studio. And that's where we'll end for today. Leave me your favorite key takeaway in the comments below. Much, much love, and I'll see you next time.